Alright, hi and welcome back to another very exciting Android tutorial. I'm your host, Matthias Reich, and today we're going to extend the application we created in episode number 7, where we talked about lists. So, back then we just created this application here. It was a simple list, and the data source for that list, those names, were actually stored in an array, and they were just displayed on screen like this. So there wasn't any possibility to interact with that list. I mean, you could click on items and nothing would happen. So what I want to do today is, when I actually left click on a list item, I want to output a little toast message that says, you've clicked on Dan, or you've clicked on Eugene, and so on. And when I actually long click on a list item, I want to have a little alert dialog which asks me if I want to delete that list item. And if I choose yes, then that list item should be removed from that list. Alright, so let's get going. As I said, we're extending the application from episode number 7. So this is basically where we left off last time. We had our string array here with our names, and then in our onCreate method we created an array adapter, and we assigned that string array to that adapter, and we choose a simple list item view from that Android layout resource file. And finally we just assigned the adapter to our list activity here. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing I actually want to do, I want to take this line here where we create our array adapter, and I want to bring it outside that method so that it's in fact a global variable. Alright? And for the sake of good programming style, let's mark this variable as a private member variable. Alright, so then I want to create another global variable which is also private, of type string, and this is called selected item, and that variable will hold the selected list item. Alright, and finally I want to create another private final variable of the type context, and I want to name it context, and I want to initialize it to this. Alright, so this will be helpful later on when we create our alert dialog. For now we just have to import that class, and so we're all set. Alright, now the underlying data source of our list is, as I said earlier, an array. And this is not such a good thing, because an array is an immutable object, meaning that you cannot add or delete items after that object is created. So if we would use that array, we wouldn't be able to actually delete items from our list. So what we want to do is we want to convert our string array into an array list and use that array list as the data source for our actual list activity or our list view. Alright, in order to do that, you want to come right here before we actually initialize that adapter, and you want to create a new array list object, and we want to data type it to a string, and that is equal to new array list type string, open parentheses, and now you can actually pass in a parameter that specifies the data you want to fill into that array list. And so we want to use basically our names array, but we want to first convert it into a list. So we're using a helper function of the arrays class, and that function or method is called asList. Alright, and that expects a parameter, and we simply pass in names, which is the name of our string array up here. Right? Close it off, and then we want to import that class. And so obviously we forgot to give it an instance name, so let's call that variable list. Alright? And now all you have to do, instead of passing the actual string array to our adapter, we simply pass our list to that adapter. Right? And so now the underlying data source is the array list that was created from that string array up here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to implement an click listener for left click. And with lists, those listeners are called on item click listener. So we come up here under super.onCreate, and we type on item click listener, and I'll name that item listener, and then I quickly import it. This is equal to new on item click listener. Right, close that off, and then we'll just add the unimplemented methods, and that gives us then an on item click method. And what I want to do is I want to rename that first parameter here, and I want to name that parent, right? Because this refers to the parent view, which is in fact the list view, right? And also I want to change that arc2 here to position, and you will see in a second why that could be helpful. Alright, so when we click on a list item, as I said, we want to output a little toast message that says, you've clicked on John, you've clicked on Betty, or whatever. So to do that, we actually use that make text function of the toast class. And what we want to do for the contact, we want to use, of course, get application context, right? Then for the text we want to display, I want to just say you have clicked on, and then plus. And now we want to actually determine which item we've clicked on. So in order to do that, we need to use a function of that list view, and we can access that function or method through parent dot get item at position, and the parameter we are passing in is actually position, and that is this parameter up here, and that gives us the item we actually clicked on. And in order to print out, we use just that toString method. Okay, and then for the duration, we'll make it short, and we'll use toast.length short, and then we actually show the toast message. Okay, so now let's try that out. But in order to do that, we first have to assign that on item click listener to our list activity or list view. And to do that, we need to get that list view first, and our list activity class provides a method for that, which is called get list view and dot set on item click listener, right? And we set that to item listener. Alright, let's save it and test that application. Okay, so here we are in our emulator, and as you can see, list is still showing up. And now if we click on a list item, you can see you have clicked on Heather, right? And if we scroll down a bit, you have clicked on Taylor, you have clicked on Aaron, you have clicked on Jack, and Kayla. Alright, so that's pretty good, that's working. And now let's implement that long click listener so that we actually can delete items from this list. Alright, so let's go back to Eclipse, and right below our on item click listener, I want to create a new line, and that says on item long click listener. We call that item long listener, and then we just import it, and that is equal to new on item long click listener, and we just add the unimplemented methods, and here we go. So let's get into that method here, and we can actually change that to true to signal that application that we handled that long click properly and that it doesn't need to fall back to that regular click here, right? And again, I want to change those arguments here to parent and that one to position. Okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to determine which item we've clicked on, and we want to store that item in our global variable, which we call selected item. Alright, so let's type selected item is equal to, and now it's basically the same code we've already written above, so it's parent dot get item at position, and we pass in position and then call to string. And so now that item is stored in our selected item variable. Alright, so now we want to actually create our alert dialog, and I won't go over that in excruciating detail because we covered that topic in our last episode, episode number 8. So if you haven't watched that yet, please do so that you can follow along easily. Alright, so let's start. Alert dialog dot builder, call that builder is equal to new alert dialog dot builder, and here we want to actually pass in our context variable we created up here, because we can't just pass in this, because this would refer to an on item long click listener class, because we're inside that right now. And so to pass in the actual application context, we need to pass in our context variable. Alright? Okay, so next we want to set the message. So builder dot set message. Do you really want to remove plus selected item plus dot? Alright, well obviously it's a question, so we pass in a question mark, of course. So then I want to set the cancelable property to false, and now the positive button, set positive button, I want to set that to yes, and then new dialog interface dot on click listener, and add a semicolon down here, and in that method we actually want to call that remove method of our adapter. Now that's the reason why we made our adapter a global variable, because we weren't be able to access that variable otherwise, because we're in another class and another method, right? So you want to type adapter dot remove, and now it expects a string, and we just pass in selected item, and that'll remove that selected item from that list. Now, in order to update and refresh the list view, we can actually call a method that notifies the list view that it should refresh itself, right? Because the data set has changed. And so we call adapter notify dataset changed. Okay, and then what we want to do, we want to output a little small toast message, and pass in get application context, and then we want to type selected item plus has been removed. Okay, and duration is toast dot length short, and then we'll show that. Okay, so that removes our selected item, and now we need to implement the functionality of that negative button. So we'll label that with no, and again, new dialog interface dot on click listener. And here we just say dialog dot cancel. Okay, so now what we need to do now is we want to actually show that alert dialog, right? And in the last episode I showed you, you were creating a variable of the type alert dialog, and then you called that builder create method, right? And then when you wanted to show that dialog, you would type alert dot show, right? And that's fine. You can do that, but that makes only sense really if you want to sort of pre-create that alert dialog at some point in time and use it at a later point in time, right? If you want to show that dialog instantly, you don't have to create another variable of the type alert dialog, but you can actually use the show function of that builder class. So if you want to show it instantly, you can just type in builder.show, and that will create and show that alert dialog, right? So, final step we need to do, we need to assign that on item long click listener to our list view, and we'll do that in much the same way as we did assign that on item click listener. So just type get list view dot set on item long click listener, right? And then we pass in item long listener semicolon, and now you can save it, and that's pretty much everything there's to do. So let's just run our application again and see what we've got. Alright, so here we are back in our emulator, and as you can see, that list still shows up. That's pretty good. And we can click on an item and it says you have clicked on Vincent, you have clicked on Eugene, and so on. So now when we, for example, want to remove Nathan, we just click and hold, and as you can see, there's an alert dialog which says, do you really want to remove Nathan? And if we click yes, you can see Nathan no longer is in that list. And there was also a little toast message that said Nathan has been removed. Alright, so you could, for example, remove Brander, yes, and maybe Debbie, also yes, and of course you could also click no and then nothing will happen, right? So that is pretty much everything. Pretty simple, pretty powerful, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you learned something. If you got any comments or suggestions, please comment on the blog at www.extensivearts.com. I'm looking forward to the next tutorial, and until then, have a good time, happy coding, and I'll see you next time.